Welcome to 50/50 Books, the book review podcast where the books are split in two and figuring out just what is going on is always a toss-up. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jonathan. This episode we're finishing up The Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig. And to start off, if you've read this book, you know this, but there's a lot of dark topics in this book to include sexual abuse, self-harm, violence, and those are all things that are probably going to come up in this episode as we talk about it. So we just wanted to put the warning up front that there may be some heavy conversation here.
Yeah, and some of the things are just kind of insinuated, but like for self-harm in particular, it's pretty graphic. So if that's a trigger for you, definitely maybe skip this one. I don't know how much we're probably not going to go into detail about it, but obviously the topic is still going to come up. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and on that happy note,
yeah,
we've reached the end of the book. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling like there were so many topics to discuss with this book. There's so many different areas it touches, and I guess themes that we could probably do several episodes on a book like this.
Yeah, we're probably only going to scratch the surface of a lot of these things, and also we have a habit of doing our notes probably later than we should. So I'm sure I'll go to bed tonight and say, oh, we should have talked about this thing and this thing and this thing.
Right.
But like to spoil the end a little bit, I think this is a book also that I'll probably read multiple times because I did like it. So there's always the possibility of conversation in the future as well.
Yeah. Which, by no surprise, as people who podcast about books, I love a book that lends itself to a lot of future conversation. So I was glad to see how many things it discussed, and well, right? I think there's the risk of packing too much into a book, and especially when there are heavy topics, making them feel like they weren't worth talking about, or like they were thrown in there for shock value or something like that. I think this book does a good job of fleshing out most of the things that it tries to talk about.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, some of it feels maybe a little bit unbalanced, which we'll talk about, but yeah, for the most part, I'm quite content with how everything was done.
So I guess with that, we can get into it.
I guess the first major point of conversation is the world building in general. We didn't really talk much about this, I don't think, in the first part, other than you had a good theory about the house kind of representing suicide and things like that.
Yeah, which I don't think panned out in the end.
Yeah, but we do have actually what I think is a pretty logical, grounded foundation here of how this world works. Even the way the characters move through it and discover things feels very like logical and well developed, I guess.
Would you include the whole rooms moving around thing? Like, remember how last episode when they were talking about it's a game, and I was like, I don't think it's a game because there's no real map. Like, do you feel like that kind of got fleshed out the right way?
Maybe not the game comparison necessarily. The way they figure out how the rooms move, the fact that they figure out it's not infinite, like all of that is done in a way that makes sense, right? Like the fact that Nick and Owen trigger a room, basically step back out of it and then are able to get to the next room is like, it's kind of genius, really.
Yeah.
Like the way that they do that, and the fact that they hold hands. Don't even talk to me about it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. It was super exciting when they got back to Marshy's room, and like, reading the first half of this book, you would never think about being excited going into that room. But like Owen was too. He's like, yes, we did it. We found it. He like goes down there. He's like, hey, what's up, Marshy? Like,
yeah.
It was so, I don't know, empowering. And especially for someone like Owen, who is very anxious, right? Like he's usually slamming doors in the house up until this point. So to see him like take it on and like literally go down and to greet Marshy, like it was just exciting to see that.
Right. Because it's obviously we have these characters, and they're described as like they're hunting them, they're trying to kill them, they're doing all of these things to them. But it's cool, I guess, that Owen is confronting that, like confronting the fear, right? Like directly, and like trying to figure out. I think in that moment he was trying to figure out if he could get through to Marshy, like as a person-to-person experience.
Because that's what he was testing a little bit at first until she kind of logicked him into wanting to die.
Yeah, because the main point becomes like these aren't really ghosts, right? They're like copies of terrible situations that have happened. So the same way we can only talk to an AI that's learned so much. Like, you can only talk to this copy so much. It's not actually sentient, like, in a meaningful way.
It's almost that idea, which came up a bit in the last book we read, of the characters have a certain amount of dialogue available, right? I mean, like going through all of the different paths and options. And I think that's kind of what you come across here with Marshy. Like, she ends up being the example of that. She pretty much repeats herself from the things she says in the first room and is like unable to creatively respond.
Yeah. And eventually the house itself kind of has to step in and speak for her and speak to Owen.
Which was badass also.
Yeah.
It's like, you did it.
And it also finally kind of sets into motion the fact that, like, we know the house has intent. We've been getting this feeling of them being hunted, but, like, now it's speaking as an entity, and now it makes sense for the characters like Owen and Lord to be like, we just have to find it now, right? Like,
yeah.
It's giving them a purpose, like an actual solidified thing to look for.
Before this, I don't think I saw the house as a character, but I didn't really see it as like the monster, the beast character. Like, this really filled that in for me, where it's, yeah, it does have intention and it has an opinion, right? It's not just a force. It is an entity.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I like the way that was delivered too. One thing that threw me off a little bit about the Marshy scene in particular was the fact that she was unable to injure him.
Mm-hmm.
Because while I understood the idea of sort of the copies not being real, I didn't think like the knife wasn't. And I think this especially comes up later when, and this is getting ahead a bit, but when Hamish tries to stab himself, right? Like, with a mirror shard, that seemed real, right? It seems like you can injure yourself. I think Owen has injured himself with things in the house. So why wouldn't Marshy have something that could actually injure Owen?
I think it's because the house doesn't want to kill them. The point is Marshy says that, or the house says this, right? Like, we could have your room and my room combined. Like, it's about adding to the house and taking the house inside and becoming the house. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's almost parasitic in a way, is how I was looking at it. So it needs its host basically alive so that it can, for one thing, keep feeding on the pain, but then also so it can add to its rooms. Like, I think you would die eventually, but...
Right, because my thought is Owen, in the first time he's with Marshy, would have killed himself, right? Like, that wouldn't have worked.
Well, it's not... He didn't really have anything to kill himself with. It would have been Marshy killing him, quote-unquote, killing him again in that room. And he probably wouldn't have died. He probably would have just broken down, right? The same way he did in his dad's room. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can see that, because I was also a little confused later towards the end as well, when Nick is like, oh, like, the way to not let the house in is to kill myself, because I'm like, somehow this doesn't feel like a solution. And there's other reasons I believe that too, but like, it didn't feel like a solution to the house problem to just die.
Yeah, like, I think his rooms would still exist in the house. Like, I think it's too late for that. And you would probably have like a Nick copy walking around at that point. Like, there's enough of the house in Nick that the house knows him, right? So it could create that copy. But like, yeah, Nick himself would be dead.
Okay, I see that.
Is how I was reading it.
Yeah, I see that. And then there was the whole crawl space situation, right? Where they find the crawl space behind the wall, which is a nice little hack. And it gives them some amount of safety. Like, they feel the difference when they go into the crawl space between that and the house. But then we also kind of see evidence that it's not totally safe, because when the three of them are in there without Nick for an extended period of time, the house still kind of has its influence on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought this was kind of a curious space. When you hear the original story of how this house came to be, you understand it as being the safe zone where the daughter is hiding. And then they also kind of mention, well, but the dad like basically like smoked her out, right? It was like, you have to come out of this house. And then she escaped from that point. So it does parallel that temporary safetiness, but I'm like, let's go back to why this house is here, or how this version of this house is here. Like, why would the house entity even allow the crawl space to exist if that's the case? Like, did it have to, just because of the way it came to be?
I think it's maybe difficult because it gets described as being safe, like the feeling disappears of the house, but like, yeah, to your point, like, they're in there for a long enough time that it doesn't seem like it doesn't actually seem as safe as it appears. So it's kind of a little bit confusing, but it could go in two directions, right? Like, it still wasn't safe enough
Mm-hmm.
because the fire and everything like that. So it's still possible the house could leak in. It's also that the characters aren't staying in there 100% of the time. They still have to leave at some points. So they're not entirely out of the house, right?
That's true.
So
Yeah.
they're taking some of it back with them. And then also, like, there's also something about, like, the apathy, like the lack of a feeling, that I think eventually takes its toll. So even if the crawl space was entirely 100% house free and, like, safe for them, I think that monotony of time would start to drag them in a different way from the house, right? Like, it still makes sense that they're upset with each other because they're trapped together, right? So, like, yeah, that might not be a house thing. That just might be a them thing, like a human thing.
That's true. It kind of matches up with the whole house analogy that Laura gives too, of like when they were talking about friendships. It's like they're occupying this tight space together for all this time. They're forced to share their existences with one another. Things happen, you know? It did make me a little hopeless when that part happened, because I'm like, no, like, you guys just said how you're coming together to save Nick and it's going to be all great. The group's all back together, you know? And then that happened. I was like, oh, they're fucked. Like, even if they become friends after this, stay friends after this, maybe this will just keep happening. Hopefully not, though.
Yeah. But I would say, for the most part, my main theory in the first part of this was they need to communicate and stay together. And staying together for sure was the answer to all of their problems.
Yeah.
The house was trying to separate them, and they just need to not do that. And everything is solved.
What's interesting is that it feels like that is Lore's biggest weakness in the book, right? This idea of like, oh, I just want to do things by myself, like independence, like I got it when I'm just me.
Mm-hmm.
She never fully breaks on it. Like, she never actually fully breaks and is like, I'm gonna do this by myself, I'm gonna separate.
That's true. She never. Well, the Lore Hamish group is interesting because they get into the crawl space relatively soon.
Mm-hmm.
So I am curious if, like, they had the Owen Nick experience of the house, or had just, like, walked through more rooms, I guess, if eventually she would have just split off from Hamish.
Yeah, maybe. It's funny because if she had ended up with Nick, like, it'd be over, because effectively Owen was alone in many ways. Like, he was with Nick, but Nick had this influence of the house. So it was kind of doomed from the beginning for Owen to end up alone. Whereas Laura was not put in that situation. They'd never separate.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't think of, like, a good reason. I mean, it's obvious Laura wants to make sure everybody gets out. I think that's still very true. But it's also kind of like, I don't know, her relationship with Hamish is just so weird. Like, she's taking care of him, but then also not taking care of him at the same time.
Yeah. I think there's like a sense of obligation, right? And I think that's a bit of what holds her back from the independence, is like, oh, that's what the house wants me to do, but really, like, as a part of this friend group, I'm supposed to stick around.
Maybe.
I guess we're already talking about Hamish and Laura a little bit. We can get into it a bit more with them as our one of our two groups traversing the house. We learn a ton about Hamish in pretty much a single chapter.
Yeah.
About him, as far as his background, his, like, how he ended up the way he is a little bit, right? He has these body image issues that have kind of stuck around since, like, they kind of started when he was a kid, because he saw himself as fat and, you know, wanted to have a certain look as an adult. And then he, like, started this kind of negative cycle of work out, look in the mirror, work out, look in the mirror, and never be happy.
Mm-hmm.
He also has, I don't know, it's hard to describe it as marriage dissatisfaction. He just mentions cheating on his wife a couple of times.
Yeah.
But doesn't really, like, talk about what the dissatisfaction in his marriage is. In fact, he kind of talks about his wife positively, right? It seems like he has some baseline level of respect, just clearly not enough to not cheat on her. So I don't feel like that gets fleshed out super much, but that is obviously weighing on him heavily too. And then he just kind of generally talks about feeling lost as an adult, which maybe is because he's living disingenuously to himself.
Yeah, I don't think it was... for one part, we never really deal with it in the house. Like, he never talks about it verbally, which I think is really important for the house. Like, the verbal part is the part that matters here.
Yeah.
But we don't really get much of a room about it. We don't talk to Laura about it. Like, we don't say anything about it. And he doesn't really, well, he's not one of our main characters really, so we don't really think about it too much either. So
it sounds like what Hamish really needed was like a solo vacation. Like, he really just needed some reflection time and like to almost force himself to miss his family a little bit and understand why it is that he decided to have one and appreciate it a bit more. Like, I think that would have been just as effective for him as being forced into this situation.
maybe that's what it was aiming for, because, like, he's the one that keeps saying, I need to get home to my kids, like, I need to get home to my wife. Like, that's the whole
He's
point.
looking at pictures of them.
Yeah, so obviously he does miss them to some capacity, but man, I just dislike cheaters so much that it's like, none of that feels genuine, I guess, right? Like, I don't know.
He's not living the life he's supposed to be living, and my theory about this last episode is that he's living the life he thinks Maddie was supposed to be living, and I'm still not pulled off of that, even though that doesn't really get confirmed. I think he does need a full restart on life, basically, which is maybe, it's not so easy because he does have a family, he does have kids, and therefore he has responsibility, though I'm not sure he's been meeting it up until this point anyway. But like, when we get to the end and they're like, yeah, like Hamish and his wife are doing marriage counseling, and once he explained his past, like, his wife had a little bit more empathy, which, like, fine, I could see that. But I don't see how you can still see your relationship in the same light after that, like, having this come out and having him explain like all of these feelings he's having. Like, I think he does need to be out of the house. He does need alone time and decide like whether he would have made the decision to have a family and have a wife had his life gone, had he had more active control over his decisions as opposed to following a script.
Right. Yeah, this I don't like to say this much, but like, this part with the Maddie missing and the overdose he has, they almost felt like they were used as justifications for the things he did, rather than like a showing of what trauma can do. Like, there's a distinction to be made there, right? And I don't know, because it's passed over so easily within the book and with the end especially, his wife just being like, oh, I didn't know you were going through these things, it feels like we're using those trauma points as like a, well, he's not such a bad guy, he's gone through something.
Yeah, which feels insufficient. Like, there's a difference between like understanding and even learning to accept that and like, I don't know, excusing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm gonna have some feelings about this when we talk about Nick too, the difference between explaining and excusing. Like, it would be okay for the wife to say those things and not invite him back in the house yet. Maybe later if they like work things out and they're like, yeah, actually we do want this, but I just don't think we're there yet with the information we've been given. Now, it's also limited information in that kind of epilogue section, so who knows, but it just feels like there should be more first.
Yeah.
We're talking about all this stuff at the end, but let's bring it back to the present. The problem within the house with having all of these issues is that Hamish isn't talking about them. And this comes back to your communication theory, Taylor, right? He's thinking about all of these things and like even like seeing some images within the house. I kind of forget what they mentioned for his. I remember Laura a little bit more. And he's not talking about it. Laura's going through the same thing. She's navigating the house. She's seeing things that bother her in reference to her mother. And I think she even acknowledges that she can tell Hamish is seeing stuff too, and just like they're not saying anything at all to each other, which is, I think, like stewing animosity between them, but also just causing general bad vibes for them.
I don't know. The lore stuff is interesting. I think she says a lot of stuff in the general sense, right? Like the world and like how I act in the world and all of this, but like I think part of the communication that's missing for them is like the personal stuff between them. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if we ever get a redo really of the confrontation in the car.
Yeah, they refer to it a couple times.
They refer to it, yeah.
Yeah.
But we can see Laurie's upset with her mom because her mom is like crazy conservative, like all of this, which makes sense, right? It feels like a betrayal.
Given who she is, yeah.
Yes. And that could easily tie into a conversation between Hamish and Laura, and Hamish saying, like, sometimes you want to believe in something, you believe in the wrong things. But then, like, that conversation doesn't go anywhere, and then they're in the mom's room, and they kind of just don't talk about those things either.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like Laura is dealing with her own problems herself. Like that Hamish doesn't need to be there.
No, for sure. I kind of have two thoughts about this. One being, it's interesting to see Laura talk about the political stuff with Hamish because she's less self-righteous about it, but it still is a little bit because she's just like, I need you to do better. There's still no, like I think I mentioned last episode, feeling that there was still no conversation about the why, the behind the scenes. Hamish has all that in his head. And he talks a little bit about his background with her eventually, but like not enough to get into that conversation. They don't have the political conversation. They don't have how he developed into that together. So it feels incomplete still. It just feels like one directional. The other thing is, yeah, you say that Laura doesn't really need Hamish to figure this out. I think in many senses, Laura has already figured herself out. She knows her own flaws. She knows why she navigates the world the way she does and how that doesn't work for her. And so I think that's why she talks in generalisms, because she's already got it figured out, which prevents her from engaging in those conversations. I think it's okay that she's got the sense developed of what she doesn't have, what she does have, and what she needs, but she's not necessarily working to change those things. And so maybe they got more into that conversation of Laura acknowledging it and being like, man, like now I see a way in which I can change to make my life better in these sorts of interactions. Like that would have been the opportunity for discussion if she's already at the point where she knows what's up.
Hamish could have offered the perspective, if he was a better father, of like what it means for somebody to rely on you, right? Like in an unconditional kind of way, right?
That's actually such a missed opportunity. Yeah, I guess it's tough too because Hamish kind of doesn't like his kids, right?
Yeah.
And he talks about being a bit of a distant father. He's like, oh, like basically I'm the classic dad who's only there for the big stuff. But if I really think about it, like my wife is doing all of the real work. So it might be a little odd for him to be like, this is what it means to be relied on, you know?
Yeah. Well, then at the very least, they could try and connect on that, like, isolationist feeling they have.
True.
Because, like, yeah, Laura obviously doesn't want a family or those things, and Hamish, I guess, thought to succeed he needed those things. So, like, they're also working in success in different avenues, and neither of them are happy. So, like, that's another thing I feel like we could have talked about more. Like, Laura does have her realization of, like, I've succeeded, but I was really happy when I was with the Covenant. And Hamish is similar. He's like, I felt most like myself when I was with the Covenant. Like, we are saying these things, but I don't feel like we're saying them to each other.
Yeah. Because I guess the point is that they start talking, right? Laura, once Hamish like almost kills himself, Laura's like, oh, I need to start saying this stuff out loud.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, they are still distant and there's this wedge between them. It's going to take a different type of conversation for them to get to that point.
Yeah.
And not that we couldn't have had it here. It's just that it needed a different flavor.
Yeah, I don't know how to solve this problem, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, it's not necessarily that I hold anything against Hamish and Laura as, like, characters, but yeah, reading their parts of the book just didn't feel as interesting to me, I guess.
The book does a bit of a swerve on the character importance, I think, in the second half, too, right? I kind of think it sets you up to think Laura and Owen are the main characters, but in truth, Owen and Nick are the main characters. And so I think what happens is we get this setup, this tension set up for Laura that gets put to the side because she is no longer the main character.
Interesting. I don't know, though, because she does a lot to figure out how to solve the problem, right? Which
That's
I think
true.
is important, like driving the plot forward and things like that. And the reason Owen is alive is because of Laura, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. I guess still a protagonist, right?
Yeah. But I think, like, plot-wise, she's doing a lot, but, like, emotionally, I don't...
Character-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even with Owen, when they do finally meet up again, their conversations aren't really great either. Like,
yeah.
Laura is only vulnerable when she thinks everybody is asleep. Owen isn't. But also the game stealing and, like, working together again, that happens in, like, 5 minutes of a conversation, and then we're kind of over it. And I'm like, that's it? What are we doing?
Yeah, because she does realize, right? Like, she's like, oh, I probably should work with Owen, but that is the extent of it.
Right, and it also doesn't feel like she's genuinely apologizing
No.
for leaving him behind, because it's not that long ago that she still thinks of Owen and is like, he needs a crutch. Like, what a terrible human being. And
I mean,
part
even when
of
they
that,
resolve it, they kind of say that too.
yeah, and I know part of it is the house, but I do think like Laura like still shits on Owen a little bit too much for me. But like, I don't know. This is maybe too harsh towards Laura, but I just and also maybe a problem with the book because they split up Laura and Owen because they're so compatible thought-wise, but like
Mm-hmm.
when they get together again, yeah, that whole culmination of feeling and like what she did to him is just not enough for me personally.
I think I agree with you fully on there needs to be an apology, because I think that's the part that's missing for me. When they get to the end, there is an acknowledgement. It does come off a little mean, I think, but there's an acknowledgement that Owen does have more needs than Lore, but that's an okay thing. Like that they can work with that. You know, we just need to accept and acknowledge that we are different people that have different needs, and this is how it shows up. And so I want to give the book some credit for that level of acceptance. I guess the explanation of that doesn't feel like enough, but that decision to accept it feels like enough for them to like be able to work together. Is it enough for them to be in a relationship or something? I don't know, but it feels like enough for them to work together. It just is missing the apology that led them to have those thoughts.
Yeah, and there is a way this would have made it, I think, more acceptable for Laura to think that way. I think we almost get there because she thinks of Owen depending on her, and it's like she doesn't want people to depend on her, and she doesn't want to have to hold up these men. And like I think that is a very like womanly experience, right? The caretaker, like somebody who has to take care of other people.
Absolutely.
It makes sense for Laura to feel that way, but I guess similar to Hamish, like that just didn't feel like a thread that was developed very well.
Dare I say, this not short book could have been longer.
I agree.
This comes up, I feel like, every book now, but it is one where I felt like I could have done with more just to flesh out some of these character interactions a bit more.
Because there's a lot going on, right? Like, Laura especially, there's a lot of the fact that she's queer, neurodivergent, like a woman, like, well, she kind of basically says she's non-binary without saying she's non-binary,
yeah.
But I'm using woman loosely here.
Yeah, and she's experienced life as a woman up until this point. She's been treated as a woman.
Yeah. So I think like the political stuff with her character, especially because of the field she's in and like what she's had to go through, it makes sense, but it also just makes her character way more complicated, I guess, than everybody else's. Like, yeah. For Owen and Nick, for the most part, they're pretty straightforward to the point in regards to their trauma and what they're dealing with, which makes their stories feel more fulfilled, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of Nick and Owen, I guess.
Yeah.
Should we talk about my boys?
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Not my boys.
In the first part, I made a crazy claim. I mean, we'll get into this more, but I did think, like, the possibility of Nick being in love with Owen, it was there. Okay. And reading these two together, I felt the energy.
Honestly, same though.
Yeah.
I not maybe I didn't feel it as strongly as you did, but it was hard to deny some feelings of that in just some of the interactions they had. I think the easy one, of course, being the hand holding you mentioned. I feel like that was almost a treat for the reader.
Yeah.
But there were even I'm having trouble to think of specifics, but there were definitely other moments reading them too where I was like, oh, I see it.
Dude, there was literally a part, I think in the past, when Nick was taking the fall. I'm skipping all over the place, but like Nick was taking the fall for the group and everybody was against it. And he was like, Owen, guys, I need to do this. And I'm like, Owen in particular?
Right. I feel like, wow, you were really reading for Owen there, though, weren't you?
Yeah.
It's an interesting point that he identified him, but that's kind of comical. I think there's something to be said too about how mean Nick is to Owen, in kind of a high school way, right? Of like, oh, he's mean to him because he likes him. I think also just the number of scenes in this second half of the book of Owen showing love to Nick, quite frankly, right? Mm-hmm. That is like one of the most impactful parts of the second half of the book. I think at one point he kind of just like hugs and holds him for a bit, and yeah, it's like, wow, this is beautiful.
Yeah. I would just like to say, this is literally how I experience every piece of media. I pick two characters and I read into everything they do.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're alone on that. I think a lot of people do this, right? I mean, that's why we have like many of the fan fictions we do.
Yeah. It's the queer experience. You have to read into
Oh,
everything.
yes, right. Because then you end up projecting, right? You're like, well, there's no one there. Like, I have to look for them.
Yeah. Which is crazy because literally Lori is right here.
I know. But that's not being written about for Laura, so you still end up looking for it.
Yeah. But let's get into them as individuals, not just a pair.
Yes.
Owen, as you've pointed out, kind of does take on the main character kind of role in this. He and Laura both figure out the house, but I think Owen is interesting in like the risks he's willing to take to figure out the house with like the Marshy thing we talked about before. Nick doesn't see him as like a fighter, but like he is fighting in this for sure.
Well, it makes it so much more powerful when he tells Nick later on about how he respects him, right? And like their differences, because he isn't that person, but he is kind of behaving the way that maybe Nick would behave if he were more interested in solving these problems, right? Where he is like opening doors, he is doing the next thing. It goes to show his respect for that different behavior is true because he's willing to do it when the time comes.
Yeah, but I think like different than Nick maybe is like he's not as loose cannon about it, right? Like yeah, I think the part with Marshy really shows this and really helps like kind of settle anybody's minds if they were worried about the self-harm portion of this book and the suicide portion of this book, because I do think it was done well in that like this isn't an absolute statement, but like usually when you attempt, like you have that feeling of regret afterwards, right? Like that is
right,
something
like
that
people
happens.
who survive overwhelmingly regret. Yeah,
and Owen has this feeling when Marshy basically kills him but doesn't kill him, right? So it's like he's acting in this reckless way to figure out the house, to get out, to reunite with everybody else, but like he's not being suicidal, right? Like
yeah. And
the book makes, I think, this very clear with the Marshy point as well. Like he doesn't want to die. He wants to live, and which is, I think, a very important distinction. Like
it makes it actually risk. Yeah.
I literally don't have anything to say about his dad. He's just kind of garbage. I don't know. Do we need to mention it?
Yeah, I mean, it made a lot more sense because the thing I was picking on Owen about in the last half is that he closed the door in that room that led them to separate because he saw his father. Now understanding that he like killed his father, I get it, because he's not alone, right? So it's not even just that he would have to relive like interactions with his father. It's like, oh, also everyone else is gonna see what you did.
Yeah.
Is he alone at that point too? That's after he separates from Nick.
Yeah. Well, separates from Nick.
Yeah,
Nick,
I know.
Like beats
Nick
his ass.
Abandons him. Yes. Yeah, I think that part is interesting too because Owen had put such a strong showing on up to this point. We talk about this leadership role. That it didn't really occur to me that in being alone, the house would get to him more, because then he does start to fall apart. And I was like, no, like Owen's been doing so well. Why would it doesn't in my head? I was like, it doesn't make sense for him to be falling apart now because he's winning. He's got control. And so it wasn't until way later in the book when they start talking about how him and Nick are now connected because they've both kind of let the house in, at least for Owen a little bit. Where I was like, oh, like he can't win alone. It's back to that. He cannot win alone. Even if he's like showing super strong, you can't beat the house by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it does make it so interesting in the fact that Maddie, this is a spoiler, but like that he didn't break to the house. Basically, like he really was so golden boy that he just kind of survived everything.
Right.
Until like the very end. Because yeah, he was alone from the start. Like at least for this group, they were together and then they were paired.
That is a good point. There's quite a contrast with Maddie being able to get out.
Yeah, he's like superhuman. Like
that's what it's giving. Yeah, I guess to be fair, like Owen has. Yeah, he has the OCD, he has trauma, right? Like, there are things that make him more susceptible, at least from what we know about him compared to Maddie, who knows what Maddie has. But Owen, there's like a point when they get into like the sort of last stages where they're with the house, and like they didn't call them marionettes, did they? What did they say? Like automatons?
Mm-hmm.
Where like the light goes out and it's like 5 seconds and Owen is like done. he's unraveled. So I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, and I think we know from the end, like, the house doesn't really leave you entirely either.
Yeah.
That's, like, in a trauma way, but I also think them in this house, it's still probably with him still, so yeah, he's very susceptible. It is interesting that, like, Lore basically takes over the end of this book, like, dealing with the house and dealing with Nick. It's kind of like
true.
her confronting all of that stuff. I guess Owen is done by that point.
You kind of need the third person, right? Like, it's not going to be Nick. Obviously, he's like the most taken.
Mm-hmm.
And like Owen, not just because of who he is, but because, yeah, like his interactions with the house now, like is weaker to the situation than Laura is. Which I guess is an argument that Hamish is also just as strong to fight the house, but Laura just actually has the idea, you know?
Yeah, that does kind of help with Loy's character a little bit. Like, there is a part of her that doesn't feel as empathetic, emotional, right? She's still kind of distant from everybody, but I guess that is the fact that she knows herself, which you pointed out, makes her the least susceptible to the house.
Right.
Which makes sense as to why she didn't leave Hamish behind, right?
Yeah, she's got the strongest sense of self, which I guess then Maddie did too.
Yeah.
Everything I said about like, oh, Maddie's got this secret dark background is just like out the door.
Yeah. He still had some obvious trauma with his parents and things like that.
Yeah.
And the house does mention his sisters were apparently like conspiring against him. So there's some stuff, but
yeah. But think too, he decided to be a part of this friend group, even though his parents wanted nothing to do with that, right? I think we get the sense that Maddie does have a sense of self despite everything that's going on at home. I think he probably still has those desires, right? He wants to be a successful kid. He wants to like maybe go to a good college, yada, yada, right? But he also wants to make his own decisions and has made his own decisions and does what he wants. So I think that helps his case.
Yeah, and I think the acid thing that Lore does, sure, his parents could drug test him, but I think that also is like he doesn't really give in to peer pressure type of thing. Like he doesn't want to be on acid, which
exactly.
I think is a completely respectable choice.
Absolutely normal.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
But we were talking about Owen. We got into Maddie a little bit.
Yeah, well, really, I think we need to be talking about Nick now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who I think maybe, just maybe, is the best character in this book.
I think I will agree with you in that maybe he's the most interesting character to read about in this book. Is he my favorite? I don't know.
Fair enough. Well, who is your favorite?
I think it's Owen. He just has such a, like, I want to call it a growth story, but really just seeing him, like, be motivated, find some energy, right? And, like, drive things forward. I don't know. It's just nice. And also just all and his relation with Nick. Like, I think the Nick part of the story is really interesting and good because there's a strong relationship development for Owen and Nick here that didn't exist. They acknowledge they weren't close in the past, but look what's happening now. And just all this love that Owen has for Nick is just great. So I think that makes me like Owen a lot more. Not that it doesn't make me like Nick, but like just seeing the love coming from that side.
Yeah, I think Owen is the most consistent in his... I mean, Nick is this way too, but like his most consistent in his love towards the Covenant, right?
Yeah.
Like he keeps up with Nick, even if it's kind of platitudes. He is wanting to talk to Lore within the house at the beginning, right? He gets shut down, but he does try. He tries to be there for Hamish. Like he and Nick are very similar in the way that they act. Nick is loud about it, like the Covenant, but Owen is doing it, right? Like he's expressing his love very openly towards them all.
Yeah. I think he does take it seriously.
Yes, and it's really the only reason they survive the house is because he's so vocal about his feelings, really.
Yeah, that's why I had a bit of trouble when Nick gives him a hard time about the emails being a little empty, because I do think it took so much effort for Owen to be the person who responds to them. Especially, I think about the last interaction that Nick had with them, like when he comes back from the juvenile detention and is like, wait, you guys aren't going to come look for Maddie with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously a bad ending for them, and I can only imagine why that group would not want to respond or interact with Nick, especially if they do see him as like a loose cannon type and if they think he's crazy for wanting to go back for Maddie, and if they're upset with his outburst, which I think he got violent in, right? I can see many reasons why no one would want to talk to Nick again. He literally punches Owen, and Owen is still responding to his messages.
I don't know. I can understand Nick's thought process of it, like, still feeling just as dismissive, because you're saying all these things to me, Owen, but I know you won't act, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not a fighter, Owen. You're not going to do anything, Owen. Like, it just feels like, I don't know, it feels like fake promises. It's not any better, right? It's a lie.
It just feels like a lack of acknowledgement of the context is all, right? I think to ask for more from Owen is to ask a lot. It makes sense for him to feel distant.
Mm-hmm.
So I think to Owen, it's, yeah, maybe it is dismissive because he really doesn't want Nick to keep going down this path, but he also doesn't want to let his friend go. Like, he still wants to be a voice in his ear. I just think there's something to be valued there.
Yeah, for sure. But I can understand Nick's frustration, maybe at, like, the fence-sitting angle of it. Like, either let me go or help me.
Given the sort of person that Nick is, it makes sense for him to feel this way. I just didn't like that he confronted him with it, you know?
Yeah. I think it's also a little bit of Nick, I think, ends up feeling like a tool. He does this thing for the Covenant because he loves them, but, like, it is him being used in the situation to take the fall for Maddie, basically, right? And then they just kind of discard him afterwards, right? He served his use. Now we can go off and live our lives and move on, and it's over, right? So there's that betrayal aspect of it, and then that tied in with all of the drama he has. Like, his dad is using him. The house is using him. Like, I don't know if Nick feels like a person. I think he feels more like something to be used by other people. Even the Covenant, which is, like, supposed to be his actual family, right? So, like, I think his anger towards them, which may be partially why he drags them into this house, under the influence of the house. But, like, if they're going to use him, then he's going to use them type of maybe mental switch up for him here.
I can certainly see him using that as the justification. I also have trouble with that, though, because he didn't ask them if he should be the sacrifice first, right? Like, he did it. He went and did it, and then he was like, by the way, I'm turning myself in at 4 p.m. today. Nothing you can do about it, right? No one else would have chosen that for him. And so when he comes back after the 6 months and is like, what do you mean you guys won't do what I want? I sacrifice myself. It now feels a little manipulative, where he's like doing this so that way he can have control, or that way he can have leverage.
Yeah, but I think it's like, it makes sense for him to take the fall because that's what tools do, right? They get used. That's his purpose in the Covenant, right? Like, he sends the bullet to protect Hamish. He, like, makes sure the group can go to college. Like,
but then does he actually care about those outcomes? Or does he only
outcomes?
Care about the outcome he wants? The outcomes where the other people get to live their normal lives.
No, I think he does care about those outcomes. I think it's more so that he doesn't care about his own outcome. It's, like, self-destructive.
Yeah. This is the reason why I thought if anyone died, it would be him, right? Because he was, like, most willing to throw himself out.
Like, I think he wants the best for the Covenant, but I think the best for the Covenant is also in his mind, we go find Maddie.
Right, because he's in the Covenant too. I just think it's a narrow view then, right? Like, I don't think there's an understanding, an attempt at understanding of why the rest of the group behaves the way that they do. There's just upset when they don't behave the way that he wants.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think Nick is obsessed with the Covenant, right? Like, I think it's the only reason he survived his circumstances, right? Like, he mentions his dad didn't break him, the house didn't break him. Like, it was about the Covenant that broke him, right? For Maddie and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So I think for him, it's like he's all in on the Covenant. So that energy not being matched back just feels like a ultimate betrayal, right? Of the family they're supposed to be.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, I guess it comes down to approach and attempt to understand. But no, I do understand his disappointment. I think I would just understand it more if it felt less aggressive. I guess. Yeah, you know,
I think it's just like a personality type, right?
Yeah,
like he is just kind of aggressive about things.
So it's tough because obviously Nick has been through tough things and no one else knows about it, which also makes it difficult, and that makes everyone's case difficult because no one knows anything, it turns out. And so I want to have empathy for him, right? But I think this also comes back to a little bit of my thoughts earlier about excuse and explain, right? Like I definitely understand why Nick is behaving the way he is and why he wants the things he wants. I just don't think that I like the way he treats the group when he doesn't get what he wants, or like doesn't communicate well why they should do it.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of expectations, I guess, of how the group should act, right? Like, he never told them about his dad, but he expected them to know, to figure it out, right?
Right. At least he expected them to figure out that he was lonely.
Yeah. He's still kind of just like expecting 100% loyalty and trust without having to speak the words. But as we've mentioned with like Hamish and Lloyd, like it's the verbalization, right? You have to say the thing for people to understand you and for people to go along with your crazy plan. You kind of need to explain it to them so that they can, have an idea of what's going on.
And Nick is right. Like, he's a bit, I think, puritanical on the covenant thing, but he's right. Like, this covenant has been disrespected multiple times in the past, to the point of like, why even have it, right? So I understand why he feels strongly that it should mean something, because it means something to him. Why doesn't it mean something to everyone else? Why make it if it's just meant to be thrown out? So I see that too. Like, I would feel a type of way about this group being, non-committal to each other.
Yeah, but obviously, realistically, you can't just, 100% go all in on something all the time.
You can't just pull your friends into a haunted staircase,
Yeah.
I do see why he lied to them, because otherwise they would have never come.
Yeah, but I mean, also we have the house to contend with that whole situation.
Yeah, I guess if we want to get more into the association with him in the house, and I'm not sure I would even say that he is the house. I do think he's strongly interconnected with it, but I do think they maintain separation. Otherwise, I don't think he would have been able to leave, which I thought he might not.
Yeah.
Like, I thought he might end up getting stuck in there. But anyway, there's a few things that Nick does in the second half where I start to wonder what is the house and what isn't, because Nick is, as we've described, a certain type of person. He's a bit loose cannony. He's got a strong energy to him when he wants something. So I have like this short list of things where I'm like, can this behavior from Nick be absolved because he's influenced by the house? And like, when I just mentioned, like, can we absolve Nick of the worst of our feelings for pulling this group of people into the house, given that he was effectively sent out there by the house? And we get the explanation that the house kind of sends people out there to wreak havoc, right? To do bad things. So I don't know. What do you think?
I do think it was mostly house. Like, I think the fact that Nick went in here alone first maybe is due to him feeling betrayed by the Covenant and thinking they wouldn't come anyway, but it also could have been to protect the Covenant, right? Like, he knew the situation was dangerous, he knew they had moved on, whatever the idea was, but like...
Almost like a thing Laura would do in that case, right? Like, just do it yourself.
Yeah, it could have been that. And maybe it was selfish, maybe he wanted to find Maddie on his own so he could prove to the Covenant that, like, he could do it, whatever the point is. Like, there is the possibility of protection in that, which I think fits Nick's character. I think he's always wanted to protect the Covenant. So I think if he was completely himself, he would not have pulled them into this house.
I think that is fair. I was leaning towards he's not absolved
Okay.
for this action, because it feels a bit consistent with his character. However, there is a nefariousness here that I don't think is aligned with Nick, because I really don't think that is him. I think strong-willed, maybe a bit mean, yeah, but like nefarious, no. Like, there is something next level about going into a house like this and then being like, yeah, I should pull my friends into here, that maybe doesn't feel like him.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I still struggle to fully excuse him here is I think he might have done it without that knowledge. Say he never went into a staircase, he never went into the house, I think maybe he still would have found a way to pull them in to have them go in together, which would have been a lot more successful probably, but still probably not okay. And so that's why I'm like not sure I want to fully pass him on this.
I mean, the world you're describing exists. He found a staircase and he went up it, and he did not tell the Covenant about it.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. I guess I'm thinking in a version where he doesn't go up the staircase himself if he holds off longer. But you're right, he does just go up it, so.
I do think, like, maybe a younger Nick, like, if they had searched for it after the juvie situation and he had found it and, like, it hadn't been so many years, might he have invited the Covenant and just had them all go in together? I think that's possible, yes.
Yeah. I wonder how much planning it was for him to actually enter the staircase. Like, did he go to investigate it and he was like, fuck it, I'm going in, you know? Or was it like I'm going in because the rest of the group won't do it with me? And I think since we don't know that information, it's hard for me to use that as evidence against him. But that's where I'm a little unsure. And I think his personality is kind of wild enough where I just don't know which direction to follow on that. I could just still see him like coming back and trying to pull him in had he not gone up in that moment.
I can see what you mean. Like, especially if he wasn't sure how long the staircase would be there type of situation.
Yeah.
But I think he at least had to know they weren't responding to him, and Owen was too weak, in his opinion, probably, to go.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, I could definitely see him like giving up, right? Being like, it's not going to happen. I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that happens that I think this is worth talking about, whether or not the house did, was when he tries to separate Laura from the group, when they're in the Grey's room, where like he's like, oh, those two are not like in it, like I think you and I should just like go off. And I was like upset reading that in the first half, being like, wow, like Nick, stop the chaos. You brought these people in here. But now, like, having this information, this is one where I would absolutely absolve Nick. The house is trying to separate the group, so that makes sense that he'd be working on behalf of the house to separate Laura out, and especially because we do see him abandon Owen later on, but it's hard to say that wasn't the house.
Yeah, I think for sure it's trying to separate the group, especially because Hamish and Owen are probably the weaker of the two. And so getting Laura alone, I think, is very important. And she's solitary anyway, so it's like already very effective. So yeah, I think that's like house logic trying to pick apart these people. I do think it's interesting that Nick and Owen stay together for so long.
Yeah, he could have dropped him right away.
Yeah, but I think maybe different than Lore is like Owen is very vocal about how much he loves the group and Nick, and we've talked about that. So staying with Owen for a longer period of time, making him feel safer, and then abandoning him is probably a bigger feeling of betrayal, I would imagine.
That's interesting. That's very dark, I think, but it makes sense. Yeah, I think that's right.
I mean, I guess it still would have been effective to leave Owen alone immediately. He probably still would have had a breakdown.
Yeah, I think also he wouldn't have learned anything, right? He would have been at his weakest. He learned something along the way with Nick about the house, which maybe is what encourages him to leave.
Yeah, but also that also might have just been a Nick overpowering the house at that moment.
That's true.
Situation.
That's true.
Like the inverse is true too, right? There is still Nick within this house.
Exactly. And he still has goals. So
yeah, and we see it is Nick that's doing things to take care of Owen in particular, right? With the hand holding, that's like a Nick idea. Like letting Owen sleep in more comfortable places. So I think that's like Nick shining through.
I agree.
If we're talking about the house shining through at certain moments, we also get the opposite.
Absolutely. The last one I have for this idea of house versus Nick is the scene where he's kind of, dare I say, bullying. He's like pestering Owen. And like trying to read him on his life a little bit and be like, I guess you're just this way, and shrugging constantly, which I agree with Owen is like the most annoying thing in the world. Like I was so annoyed with Nick reading this section. I bring this up as a potential contention of House versus Nick because obviously having Owen have an emotional reaction is to the benefit of the House.
Mm-hmm.
Having him be upset with Nick is a benefit to the House, especially if it encourages separation. So there's many ways in which this weakens Owen in the favor of the House. However, Nick has generally been kind of mean to Owen. I think he does kind of believe the things he says about Owen. And so I think the House in many ways is really just an instigator. It's pulling out things that these characters do believe, but maybe don't want to believe or don't want to say or something like that, right? It's kind of pulling out their worst parts. Is this still Nick just being encouraged to say those things?
I mean, probably. Like, we see the ways in which the House kind of gets in their heads and stuff like that. So it's probably is what is happening with Nick here. I also think, I don't know if this is before or after the I love you moment or whatever, but there is the point of like Nick and Owen, everybody knows they are not the closest within this friend group, right? So Nick, for probably a very long time, probably thinks the rest of this group hates him. The house has probably been telling him that multiple times.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense for him to kind of pester Owen and like make fun of Owen and wear him down, both for the sake of the house and because he already thinks Owen hates him anyway. And so that just means like the shock he feels when Owen is like, we're not close, but we could be close and I love you. It's like, oh, like not only is that correcting the house, it's correcting his own mind about what he's believed, right? So like, I mean, yeah, this is probably mostly Nick, but I think it makes sense considering they weren't close before this trauma bonding, you know?
What you just said makes them even more strongly connected, right? Because Owen, when he comes out talking about his relationship with his father and how he treated himself a certain way, almost to make it true, right? To make the things his dad said true. That kind of feels like what Nick is doing here, right? Of like goading Owen to treat him a certain way so that way he can prove that Owen hates him.
Oh my god, stop.
Right? And so and then Owen doesn't, so he comes out and says these things. It's really impactful because it doesn't do that. And Owen unfortunately does not have such an experience with his father, right? They are leaning into kind of the same cycle.
It's actually so offensive that you've just said that to me.
Why?
I just cannot believe it. I mean, it's true. They really are just some men with some daddy issues.
Right. Owen says as much, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a lot of beauty in the fact that they are so different and so the same, right? Like that they have this moment of we are so separate, but we can still love each other. Yeah. They are meant to grow together.
Yeah.
As it turns out. Yeah.
They're literally like the perfect pair. I don't know how else to explain it.
They're great compliments.
Yes.
Yeah, it's that perfect balance. Like they're compliments personality wise. And they understand each other in a way no one ever will, right? And that's both due to their background. And I thought about this a lot when the house gets into Owen's head. It's like, oh, these are going to be the only two. Well, maybe Maddie too, but these are going to be the only two who come out of here with the house in them a little. And no one else is going to be able to understand that but each other. So they're going to have to rely on each other.
That's crazy. You're saying some crazy stuff to me.
I'm glad to be leaning in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so insane that we're able to reach this level of like kind of intimacy between them, like on a platonic level, but like the way they're able to grow closer. And the whole time, like we're getting hints of this throughout, but like the whole time Nick has already been taken by the house. Like that is insane writing to me.
Yeah. It's powerful. Love is powerful.
It is truly. Which we also talked about, kind of like that hopeful ending, like the power of friendship, the power of love. Like we do get there in the end.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. Like friendship and connection is probably the point of this book, right? Because as we get to the end, this is like the end more so than like the end scene with the house. Like they're going to approach Maddie. They seem to have found him, right? They're going to approach him. You get that kind of the covenant vibe again, right? Of like, we love each other. We're doing this because we love him. Of like, we're willing to do whatever it takes here we're going to figure out if Maddie has the house in him or not, if he's responsible for like these college girls going missing, like whatever it is, we're going to address it because he's one of ours.
Yeah. Like Lore's metaphor for houses and friendship, like they're like willing not only to repair, but it was kind of like a complete breaking down to rebuild situation.
Which I guess gives me some better feeling about how hopeless I felt about them at that moment earlier. I was like, that was the breakdown, right? They needed the breakdown, including the fact that Owen and Nick weren't around for that. They had effectively broken down too. They needed the fresh start, which I'd argue Hamish does too.
Yeah.
But that allowed them to like, yeah, I guess be the adult friend group that they need to be.
It's like they've just moved into a new house, right? And they still have memorabilia from the old place, like telling Nick all of the childhood memories they had together, like, that stuff still exists, but this is going to be a different type of friendship, right? Because they live in different places, because they have different dynamics now,
Mm-hmm.
all of that kind of stuff, but it's still just as powerful.
Yeah, it is interesting how they destroy the house, right? Well, not the fire, but like how they get Nick back from the house, really, and like telling all of these stories and like reaching out to Nick himself. um you briefly mentioned the relationship between this book and it in the
Mm-hmm.
last book. I didn't think about it for most of the book, honestly, but this, I was like, oh, it is similar, actually. Like, this using, in a very different way, an emotional appeal to destroy the enemy. Like, I guess in it, it's because they're basically bullying it in it, but in this one, it's like very positive, right? They like bring up all these stories, like they laugh, they cry from laughter. So it was kind of a nice alternate version to that.
I mean, some people would say maybe it's a little bit cheesy,
Yeah.
but it is kind of like a how else? How else do you save somebody from the edge of like basically killing themselves, right? Like you're letting the house, the terrible experiences, like evil incarnate in a way, like take over your life, right? You're giving yourself up. Like that's basically suicide here.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you save anybody from something like that? You have to, remind them why they should stick around.
Yeah, which is tough, but
Yeah, for sure.
they got it in this case. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I had kind of, like I said, thought, well, the house doesn't really represent suicide, and I guess it doesn't, but that is kind of it's kind of what it amounts to if you give into it all the way.
Yeah, it kind of it brings us up a few times, but like that within and without feeling, it's not only like the suicide part, like the killing of yourself, but also the way you inflict that pain on other people, which is like how the house starts, I would assume. Like I'm assuming it was PTSD. I'm not really sure. They don't really address it very clearly, but we
Right.
have
So
a
the
veteran,
veteran. Yeah.
yeah, who ends up killing his family. Like the ways in which trauma not only make you destroy yourself, but also destroy the world, which is what the house is feeding on. Like it's, both of those things.
Yeah, I kind of liked to think about this house in an almost like evolutionary or biological standpoint of like, what does it eat? What does it need to grow and spread? And you got at this a bit earlier of like, well, it needs to kind of, it spreads and reproduces effectively by feeding on these types of stories, right? These types of experiences from the world. And, Nick contains one of them, and then it kind of puts more of itself in his head too, right? So it kind of is reciprocal. Like, how do you fight a creature whose entire existence, right, who is evolved to exist on these types of things? You have to attack it directly on its life source effectively. So it was kind of, I think maybe this is like a particular reading to read it as evolutionary, but it almost did feel like that's what it was setting up, of like, this is how this beast works, right? The way this beast works is it evolved to eat other traumas. And so how do you fight that?
Yeah, I think we could have gotten more into like the love aspect, maybe. Like we get it obviously with the communication and blah blah blah, but there's a version of this story where we save the house, right? Or the house
Yeah,
has a failsafe inside of it that saves people, right? Like there's something that could be done with that.
I actually thought that was the direction it was going, and for a while I was trying to figure out if the house really was a person behind it, like if it was the dad or something,
Mm-hmm.
because I kind of thought that the love wasn't just going to be at Nick. Like, I thought they would maybe have to find a way to express love for the house, which would have required a person potentially behind it, because otherwise I don't know what they would pull on. So when it didn't go that way, and then they just kind of burned it down, I was like, oh, I guess it's not that. I guess it's not just like love solves everything.
Which I think is fair. Like, we do reach the end of this book, and it's like some things can be fixed and some things cannot be fixed, which I think is a fair assessment to have.
Yeah, I mean, like, Laura shows up to Maddie's with a gun.
Yeah, yeah.
She's not confident that love will be enough.
Yeah. What is your take on it? What do you think about Maddie?
I struggle with this. This is a part of the book that I maybe it's left a bad taste in my mouth, but I am tempted to believe that Maddie did leave because he gave into the house.
Mm-hmm.
And carried that with him and is now in the world to wreak havoc. I am tempted to believe he's responsible for the college girls. The reason I think this, and also don't think this, is like, I can't imagine that he would have gotten out of the house as himself without the influence of the house and not looked for the crew. Because leaving the house after having seen the house show him that they didn't look for him would have required him to not believe that. Like, not believe that they were not looking for him. So he would, I think, then get out and go look for his crew. But he instead is isolated. So then that leaves the other option of he believed the house, he got out, he's not looking for the crew because he doesn't believe that they care for him, and also because he's got the influence of the house, and his goal in the world is now to wreak havoc. But I just have trouble believing that he would have responded that way to the house showing him that, given like what we said about his sense of self and such.
I guess it was just that over time, they're not showing up. The house always wins. Like, it wore on him eventually. So I could see that. Like, not a quick snap and he suddenly feels betrayed, but like just over time it wore him down and they didn't show up. So what else was there to believe, right?
Yeah, I guess especially because it seems he was there a long time, I could see that happening. Like, see him losing that strong sense of self he might have come in with. And like, this is a reminder too that he was there alone, right? The house works a lot better if you're alone. It seems to not do well with groups, in fact. So
Yeah, I feel like the logical answer for the end of this book is that Maddie is taken over by the house and he's the one disappearing these girls. Because, like, that's a weird detail to include, that there are college girls missing. But I don't know, my hopeful little self wants to believe that maybe he tricked the house, right?
right.
Like, Maddie just played his cards right and made the house think it won.
I just wonder how he would exit the house having deceived the house, you know? Because it has kind of some amount of control, at least over the exit. There's the whole, like, you have to give into the house to get out. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, the rest of them got out. Everyone except Owen. Well, I guess everyone except Owen and Nick got out without the house in them, right?
Yeah, maybe it's like it did win in the sense that he felt betrayed by the Covenant and that's why he didn't look for them. But in the fact that he needs to now wreak havoc and, like, you know, hurt people, maybe it didn't win in that aspect. Because he's so sure of himself. Like, he is, from all accounts, he seems to be a good person in the genuine sense, right?
Yeah.
So, like, maybe that stayed with him. And there's nothing the house can use against him to disprove that fact. It's only, like, the Covenant angle that maybe that's why he doesn't try and find them, because he feels betrayed by them type of situation.
I would think, though, even if he felt this way about them, like, we get information from Nick that there's kind of online community around the staircases, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't think that Maddie would come out and, like, try to prevent the average person from ending up where he did?
That's a good point.
Like, I could see him being like, okay, like, if he came out with some amount of, like, self, right? Saying he won over the house to some degree, I would think he would have that drive to be like, I cannot let anyone else get stuck in there again. And at the very least might end up on said Reddit board saying, this is what it was like in there, or like, this is what happens if you do it, don't do it, something like that.
Maybe it's an issue of, like, it's like a parasite that won't let you kill it, right? Like, it won't let you harm yourself because you would harm it. That kind of, like, protection being put in place.
I could see that. Sorry, I just had another thought too of, like,
okay,
so the group, other than Nick, when Maddie disappears, they decide, you know, effectively they think he's gone for good, right? Like, they I don't think they think they can save him, and that's part of it. They move on with their lives, right? After this all happens. What if Maddie comes out and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to move on with my life.
I mean, fair.
Right?
You know?
Like, it could just be as simple as that of, like, I'm not going to go back and look for my old friends. Not because they betrayed me, but because, you know what? I've been through a whole thing. I'm just a new guy now. Like, I think I'm just going to start fresh.
Yeah, I guess the issue is, like, timeline, right? We don't know when he left or how long it's been since he left and he started doing this, supposedly. Like, how lenient is the house about when you can cause havoc, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd certainly like to believe he's not targeting anyone, right?
Yeah. I think my logical mind is like, he's guilty as shit. But though I want to believe he outplayed the house and he's fine.
Some of these alternatives have given me some hope, honestly, because I just didn't see another way. But I think at a baseline, yes, I agree with the logic. I think it's likely that he did. Well, one last thing for the end of the book, I guess, unless you have more to say about Maddie.
No, I'm okay.
Was this little drop that Laura and Owen are maybe a thing again? They're at least having sex, apparently. I would have to agree with the logic there on they didn't say anything in response, so they're probably doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that means we're supposed to extrapolate they're romantic with each other, but I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think they're necessarily romantic, because Laura is a romantic, and that's not changed. I mean, it's a spectrum. She could develop romantic feelings for him. That's entirely possible.
I was just trying to think if it would make logical sense for her to have sex with him if they... knowing his feelings, right?
I know.
Is Laura too smart to have sex with him knowing that he would get romantic about it if she's not also interested in romance?
This is my problem, okay? I think they're very compatible logically and, like, game-wise, creatively, right?
Laura says as much, yeah.
Yes. We see it throughout the book. It's proven time and time again. Are they compatible relationship-wise? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think Laura, for one thing, she's poly, right? We know she's poly. And Owen, at least, seems very exclusive.
I can't imagine him not being monogamous. I mean, he's been obsessive over one person for a long time.
Yeah, he gets jealous about the Maddie Laura situation. Like, it seems as... And I was, like, of the opinion in the first part of, I don't think he still holds romantic feelings for her.
Right.
That was the vibe I got. I still kind of stick by that. Like, but I guess he did. I was wrong, whatever. But
I could see an argument that he didn't, but to me, it still feels like he did.
But of course, like, that's not talked about in the book. That's another thing that's not talked about in the book. Like, we have the game situation that's kind of very quickly dealt with in the book. But the whole Laura, Maddie, Owen, whatever the fuck, and them possibly having feelings for each other, like, we don't talk about that in the book either, which seems a little bit important if it's going to end up with them being involved at the end of the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, based on what we know, to me at least, it doesn't make sense for them to be involved in, like, a serious capacity, which I think serious is all Owen is capable of.
Yeah. I would have really preferred an ending where they were just work buddies.
Yes.
Because, yeah, like I said, Laura kind of says this in the first half where she's like, yeah, I kind of figured out that romance wasn't for us. Like, we make really good work partners. We make really good friends. I'm like, yes, like, we don't need to romanticize everything, right?
Yeah. It hasn't been that long, right? It's been 6 months. And they've just started working together again. And, like, this group is obviously still figuring out everything. So it's like, it feels more like a trauma bond, like, trauma relationship than, like, an actual logical, like, well thought out decision on their part.
I agree.
But I'm also a hater because I've been shipping Nick and Owen this whole goddamn book. So What can I say?
Yeah, I see that a lot more.
And even for them, I wouldn't have wanted to maybe end this book with them getting together necessarily. Like, I joke about that in the first part. But I don't think any of these characters, with only a 6-month time jump, I don't think any of them are ready for anything.
No.
Like, there's already the childhood trauma they all have to deal with because they've been burying that shit forever. And now they have all the house trauma that they have to deal with.
Exactly.
And they're seeing Maddie for the first time in, like, 20 plus years.
Yep.
Yeah. But in my head, I was talking about this, like, genuine, I might be the first person on AO3 to write a Staircase in the Woods fanfic because I've been having ideas.
Ooh.
It's crazy. Like,
so you checked and there isn't any right now?
No. Okay. God, no.
This is a very fresh book too, but maybe it'll not get them. So yeah. All right. What are you thinking?
I'm just thinking, like, they're hooking up. Obviously, they're not compatible. They have an issue over that. They separate.
Mm-hmm.
They need some distance. Laura obviously works better alone, so she's going to want to figure this out on her own, and so Owen has to go somewhere else, right? Where would Owen go? Where would that man go to recuperate? Obviously to Nick.
Think he would seek Nick out?
I mean, Yes. Why would he not? Not necessarily romantically, but
Sure,
like
sure, for support.
yeah, for support. He's
Do
not
you
going to go to
think-
Hamish.
Do you think they end the book knowing, like, understanding how similar they are? Like, I know we've made a lot of observations of like they could grow together very well. They have a lot of overlap but complementary personalities. Do you think they've appreciated that at the end of the book?
I think so. I think we see scenes of Nick being sick because of the house, and like Owen is holding him and he's leaning on Owen. Like, I think they've maybe not verbally said it, but I think they like understand that they can lean on each other and understand each other.
Okay, I accept that. Yeah.
Yeah. But fanfic. Yeah, I don't know. I just imagine Nick and Owen talking about lore, you know? Cuz Nick also is very focused on the lore Owen situation.
Yeah, he kind of is an instigator about it, so.
Yeah, so he'd be there. Maybe Maddie would show up and like give his 2 cents. I don't know how I feel about Maddie yet. I think in my little headcanon, they all have to be happy, so Maddie has to be okay.
This is a book with a hopeful ending, so I could see that, yeah. And if you do it in a fanfic, you can just choose that. So
it would be what I would choose, yes. And Hamish, he's kind of just there. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, I could see it. I would read it. I have my own. I guess not. I'd said fanfic, but I'm like, it really is more just an alternate ending, but I would like to see this written out as a fanfic.
Mm-hmm.
For me, like, you know, I mentioned earlier, I had the thought that maybe Nick wouldn't actually get out of this house. And there was even a mention in the book of what if the house is his life support? Like, if he can even live without the house after this. So with that comment, I started to think, okay, if this book ends where Nick is the only one who doesn't make it out of the house, not quite him dying, right? But him not making it out. What if, because he's super entangled with the house, like, the way that they're able to get out is that Nick actually becomes the house. And this is kind of in line with the way you were talking about it earlier. Like, he really becomes the house. He merges with the house and becomes one with it. And that gives him the power to permit everyone else to leave, right?
Interesting.
And it wasn't too far from this when the house was like, you give me Nick, you get out.
Mm.
But I'm thinking not just that the house gets him, but that Nick becomes the house. So in this situation, I think the behavior of the house changes because Nick is not the nefarious being that the house is. I think Nick takes over. He no longer is, as the house is no longer searching for trauma. Instead, he is maybe searching for love. And the way that this would perform is when the staircase shows up, it's not showing up in random places to prey on people. The staircase is showing up specifically for the Covenant because he is seeking them out to reconnect with them. And it becomes a way for the Covenant to reconnect with one another. The staircase shows up, they all go, maybe it's even separate staircases in their various locations. They all enter, they all get to convene with Nick and each other and like maintain this friendship throughout the rest of their lives, despite the fact that Nick was never able to come back into like the real world.
Wow. I like that a lot.
It felt like a potential cute ending to a dark thing, which the dark thing being Nick not coming out.
Yeah, for sure. Like, hardcore horror fans would probably hate your ass.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, it is very cheesy.
Yeah.
But that's so interesting.
Yeah, it would require some, like, there'd have to be an argument for why Nick is able to overpower the house itself and like win over it. Like, how does he get to the point where he can bring in love even? Because obviously that would break the house down more. But how do we get to like step one? That would be harder to explain. But otherwise, I think it works in the system of the book.
Okay, but hear me out, right? Yes, Nick is the house, but also Owen has a little bit of the house. So what if they both stay? Because it's also like you can't be alone, right? Like, you shouldn't be alone within the house. So if they both stay in the house, I'm just saying.
Okay, so think of this modification then. Maybe they don't all stay in the house, or he doesn't stay in the house immediately. Maybe Nick gets stuck in there. But in the same way that Nick spends all this time being like, we should go back for Maddie, Owen, now being more like Nick, is like, I should go back for Nick. And in returning to the house and showing Nick all the love that he shows him, Nick is then able to then really become the house. Then he's able to overpower the house via the love. And that is what like leads to the beginning of this. And then also, of course, like that gives the opportunity for a lot of Nick and Owen alone time, right? So then it still kind of gets that relationship angle a chance.
That's good. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like this book, I need to see that AO3 number go up because this it's got the open ending at the least, right? Like someone could be writing fanfic about what they think actually happened with Maddie. The prompt is there.
Yes, for sure, for sure. Damn. All right. So I'm not saying if you happen to look it up and you find it on AO3 and you see a name you don't recognize, it's not necessarily me, but like,
right.
you know,
yeah,
you never know.
I mean, also if you listener are so inspired to write one of these ideas or an idea of your own, I just let us know.
Yes, and Chuck, I don't know how you feel about fanfic. You seem very woke, so you're probably pro fanfic, to be honest. But if you're against, just let us know. But
yeah,
hopefully you approve.
Well, with no lack of words, I think we're reaching the end of the conversation on the staircase in the woods.
Yeah, this is a long one.
Yeah, I mean, I knew we were going to have a lot to say. Like I said, I think we could do many conversations about this book. There's a lot to talk about. So I think with that, we can get into reviews.
I'll keep it very short because again, a lot of words. I think this is almost a perfect book. We mentioned at the beginning, it did feel a little imbalanced. I wasn't entirely happy with like some of the conversation, blah, blah, blah. But I was tearing up with like the Nick Owen stuff.
I was almost there. I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think even if you're not entirely happy with a book, if you're able to feel something, like positive and negative emotions, or well, maybe not negative emotions, but like positive in the sense of joy of me like kicking my feet when they're holding hands, and like also me like getting teary-eyed when like something emotional is happening, right? Like those two things. Right? I think if you feel that when you're reading something, then the book has succeeded in its job to entertain you, but like also to impact you in a way. And I think I was impacted by this book. The fact that I'm thinking about writing anything other than the novel I'm supposed to be working on is insane. Probably should not do that, but who knows,
Could give you some good energy.
For sure. And so I think I really want to give this book a 5. But I'm like nervous because like the ending and like, the Lord Hamish stuff. I'm like, is it a 5? Is it a 5? I don't know. So it's like,
should I go ahead and give my review before you give a number then?
Oh, okay.
Because I have some similar thoughts. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm feeling very similar. I think I really, really liked reading this book. Again, like all the conversation opportunity, the different things it tackles pretty well for being a single book.
Mm-hmm.
The investment that I felt in the characters, like I was really into this book. Like I really just wanted to keep reading it. And few books give me that energy. I think I like reading a lot more than Once Upon a Time for sure. But like still, I don't know if I feel like that strong energy that I was feeling of turning that page as I was in this book. So I feel similarly that this is a really, really good book. Some of the things that make me hesitant to give it a 5 are the Maddie ending being as ambiguous as it is, and not because it wasn't explained, because I think there's a difference. I think it's okay to not explain everything at the end of the book, to leave it up to interpretation, but kind of what I was saying of the I don't believe Maddie would do A, but then if he didn't do A, he had to do B, right? Like that's giving me pause, and so I'm having trouble with that. I also have trouble with the idea that they really should have just chased Maddie to begin with. Like I have so much understanding for why the group didn't do that, and now being at the end of the book and it's like, yeah, I guess if they had chased Maddie to begin with, things would have gone better.
And
I guess that's just because that's the chance of something like this, but it's hard for me to feel like that was the right writing decision. So like, I have some ideas, like some beef just with that idea. It's just a difference in opinion more than anything, right? But because I feel that way, it's hard for me to give it a 5. I'm also a little concerned about rereadability. I want to reread it, and I think part of me thinks I could give it a 5 if I reread it, and part of me thinks not, because I don't know if I don't know if like now knowing the quip and like knowing how this book ends would make it an enjoyable read the second time. Not that it would be bad for sure. Like when I say not enjoyable, I don't mean bad. I just mean like I don't think I would get the same investment in the characters that I had the first time around. So I'm willing to try it. I'm willing to see how that goes after some time away from the book and update my opinions on that. I think these hesitations are keeping me from the 5, even though it's like hard for me to say I felt as strong as most other books. Like, is it like if I'm feeling this strongly about it, if I, like you said, I'm feeling moved about it, why shouldn't I be giving this a 5? Right? Like if I feel better about this book than most other books, but then I can't help but think about those gaps.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is going to land me at a 4.5. So I can give it the 5 on the Goodreads, but know in my head that there was still a little something missing for me.
Genuinely, I think I'm exactly the same. I think I'm a 4.5, but on the Goodreads, I'll give it a 5.
Yeah.
Like, I've marked a couple things as 5 that probably shouldn't be 5s, but like, feeling impacted by the book, I'm like, that's enough for me. Like, it makes up for the mistakes of the book. So like, I definitely think I'm closer. I'm like a 4.75, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
4.99. I'm like there, basically.
Yeah, I guess it's easy in like in my armchair, right? To be like, I would have done this, or I wanted this thing to be different.
Yes.
It's obviously okay to have a difference of opinion in how I would do it versus the author, and still like really, really like the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if it felt less fundamental to me than like the Maddie ending thing, right? Like then feeling like I don't understand this Maddie ending, then maybe it wouldn't matter as much. It's just because that feels important to me that I feel like a little something.
Mm-hmm. I feel that. Yeah. And then also, obviously, I'm like slightly upset about the Laura Owen situation, but
Yeah, I feel that way too.
but like I'm not like actually mad at the author.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
take my words as being mad. I think Nick and Owen platonically is a very beautiful relationship, but like, I'm queer. I'm gonna look for queer shit absolutely fucking everywhere, and I got the vibe. When you catch the vibe, you catch the vibe. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. I know we're saying a lot of words to talk about knocking a half point off of a book, much more than we do when we talk about getting 3 points off of a book, but I say that all to say, like, I really think this author did do a great job. Like,
Yeah.
this is a great book. Kudos to this author. I like certainly would read other things this author has written. Like, it's overall, like, this is great.
I agree. So yeah, I'll go like a 4.99. I don't know.
Yeah. With that, let's do a Rosebud Thorn on this one. It's been a while since we've Rosebud Thorn. We've done a lot of good vibes, but I think we've had so many thoughts and ideas for this one. We can do it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this is kind of going to be a repetition of things we've probably said a little bit, but I think that's fine.
Yeah, so for Rosebud Thorn, this originates as more of a reflection activity, not on this book podcast, but we bring it in here to use the rose as a thing we liked about the book, whether content or writing wise, the bud as something we would like to see happen in the future to our characters, and a thorn as something that maybe bothered us. And we don't have to do it in that order, but we have to hit those 3 things.
Mm-hmm. So I can go first. Rose for me, I mean, the obvious answer is Nick and Owen, but yeah. I think I'm just going to specify Nick in particular. I think the way he comes off as almost uncaring and not planning and not helping in the beginning gets explained wonderfully because he is the house. And I mean, the conversation we had about like, what's Nick, what's the house, like the depth of his feeling, even though he's not a main character, it's intense. It's insane. Like, I don't know. He's just such a well-written character.
100% agree. I want to add to that to say I hated Nick in the first half of this book, and maybe that was intention, right? I think the author was trying to make him rub you the wrong way, and I feel like along with Owen Owen has loved him the whole time is the sense I get, right? But like with Owen kind of coming out with the no, but I love you for who you are, I love your differences, and I want to understand you more, like I felt that too as the second half of the book came along. I grew the empathy I was supposed to have for Nick. So I think that was so like artistic.
Yes. Yeah. This is for sure a book about empathy, right? Like it's the type of horror book where there is the monster, but like that's not really the point. It's like about the trauma, right? And you can hate those kind of horror books if you want, but for this, I think it's just like a lore, especially I think embodies this. Like you can do things on your own, but you need to have empathy for the people you're with, even if you don't agree with them, right? Like, I don't know. There's just like a certain care we should have for each other.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's also a rose from me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My rose is the chapter titles. I actually really liked that despite having a ton of chapters in this book, the author went ahead and gave a little name to each and every one of them. Some of them were fun. Some of them were on the point, like they just were what they were. It was a number of flavors, and I really enjoyed it. I think the only one I didn't like was like, I think there's a chapter towards the end that was like, it was like exorcism and escape, something like that. But like basically the resolution chapter, I was like, oh, don't tell me we're going to resolve here. But the rest of it, I was like, yeah, I love these.
Some of them were like actually a response, right, to what was happening. Like the phone would ring and the chapter title would be pick up the phone. And it's like, it started to make the chapter titles, some of them at least, feel like part of the story. Like, is this the
like
house?
Communication?
Yes, yes. So I had like early theories about that, but it kind of goes in and out, I think, for the most part. But there is probably a reading you could do on the chapter titles as like the voice of the author, the voice of the house, the voice of something else, like, or the voice of the characters. Like, I don't know. You could probably look into it a little bit more, but they were really good.
Yeah.
For my thorn, I think maybe, I don't want to just say Hamish as like a character. I think I just don't like cheating storylines in general.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, the fact that he never talks about it and like we never see the friend group's reaction to what he's done. It just kind of like, I don't know, leaves a bad taste in my mouth about the whole situation.
Yeah, I get that.
I don't think we needed it. Like, I don't think we needed the physical action of him cheating. Like, I think the apathy...
Yeah, it's like one too many things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the apathy he felt towards his children, he could have also felt towards his wife. I think that would have been enough.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, it was honestly just the ambiguity at the end. And now this is where I get to just like be picky. I actually would have liked a fleshed out, this is what happened to Maddie at the end. I wouldn't have minded it. Like I said, author doesn't have to do it. Books don't need it. But I would have liked it. So that's all.
Yeah, I get that. Sometimes, yeah, ambiguity is like, if interesting, fun is always provides the potential for more afterwards. But there is something about just like a resolution.
I just read the author's whole book. I'm invested in the author's ideas. So I think a little bit of it is too like, oh, I'd like to know what you think happened at the end of your own book, but I get it. I also get it.
Yeah. And then finally the bud. I feel like my fanfic is basically my bud.
I know. I was going to say, I know exactly what yours is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think the main bud is that Maddie is himself, that he hasn't done anything drastic, and we get the Covenant again. I like that Nick has basically has a life now. Like he works at like this gardening place or whatever, and I think that's so cutesy of him.
I love it.
Yeah. So I just hope this group is good, right? And that the house that they have now stays intact and they like communicate and can continue to communicate and like all that kind of mushy stuff. I don't know. Not a particularly focused bud, but like a general I hope they're okay type of bud.
I think mine is in the same vein and somewhat related to the same ideas of my little fanfic idea of I would like to see, and this could be its own version of fanfic too, but I would just like to see consistent friend reunions for this group.
Mm-hmm.
Like I with my college friends, for example, we do an annual trip together, right? So we're spending at least 4 days straight together a year, despite living in all very different places and having our own very separate lives. Like we have a consistent, like every year we're going to see each other for one thing at least. So I would love to see that for them. Like it's clear that they still have their own separate lives. Like there could have been a version of this where some of them decide like we're going to move closer together, kind of like if Nick and Owen moved closer together, right? But short of that, I would love to see like, yeah, what does a friend reunion look like for these folks? I think having that would be good for them.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, have we said enough words about this?
Yeah, it's over. It's done. Yep. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Heck yeah.
We usually do Halloween Recs. We forgot last year. So I did the clever thing in which I said, Thanksgiving, we'll do stories we're thankful for, because I wanted to talk about a video game. And I'm going to talk about it here because it's Halloween. And that game is Dredge, a fishing horror game. It has a beautiful story. So I will recommend that game always, forever. And it's not too scary. Like, I played it and I looked at like a horror guide for it, which maybe is cheating, but whatever, I don't care because I don't like horror games. But it's not too bad. Once you figure out the dynamics, you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's still on my list. I still haven't played it. I have learned that book form is my favorite form of horror over the past couple of years. I definitely still watch horror movies. I don't typically do horror games, other than like me and a crew have started playing Soma, but we're not very far into it. Like, I'm willing to, it's just not my preference. I might have recommended Slay the Princess last year. I'll just go ahead and throw it out there again too, just because that is a horror game I've played and liked, and it's also like pretty much just hand-drawn art, so it's like less visceral than other horror games, even though there's body horror in it. I'm gonna throw it out there, but yeah, that one's like a video game that works for me.
I haven't played it, but I'm slightly familiar with it.
It's very good. I have a good time playing it every time. What are we reading next, Taylor?
Next time we are reading, I don't know if I'd call it one of my favorites, but it's a book that for some odd reason follows me throughout my entire life. I've read it 3 times. So we're doing another one of those experiments. And it's an old book. We're reading The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger.
Whoa.
That's right. The red flag of books is here.
And is this the first time we've done something that might be considered like a classic?
I mean, House Moving Castle, I guess, would maybe be the closest if you're like fantasy classic, I guess. You can consider that one. The Catcher in the Rye, we're reading up to, but not including chapter 15, just so you're aware. And I will say theory-wise, it probably won't be too heavy on the theories because it is a contemporary, like pretty grounded book. It's just like, yeah, it's basically about a boarding school student, Holden. He's been expelled multiple times. He's being like expelled again, basically. So he kind of goes on this like journey through New York during the winter season. That's why we're reading it November. So we kind of get that drab feeling. At least I always get that feeling when I read this. And he kind of just has a bunch of different experiences, hates everybody around him, maybe hates himself a little bit. I don't know. Who can say? But yeah, not many theories necessarily for the end, but
I'm sure I'll have thoughts and opinions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very concerned you might hate this book because a lot of people hate this book.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily even that you'll think it's a red flag, which is how some people take it, but Holden can be very annoying if you don't like understand, I guess.
Kind of the way I felt about Nick.
Yes. You just made me very worried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited nevertheless.
But that'll be next time for the wonderful month of November. And if you have any thoughts and theories about The Staircase in the Woods, which we've just read, obviously, or for The Catcher in the Rye, which, you know, might just be hate comments more than thoughts and theories, but that's okay too. We'll take them. All of our socials are in the description. And until next time.
All right. Bye-bye.